In today's video, I'm going to talk about relocation. Relocational astrology is the idea that we can compare or alter our charts in respect to the place that we live. And the theory is, if we move to a different place, different planets can get activated and our life will improve. And people who practice relocational astrology as the core or the foundation of their practice make statements about relocation astrology that really sound like it's the save-all thing. It's what's going to make the difference in your life. If you're living in a city that you've got a bad relocation with, you've got to get out of there or else. And if you find the city that you would have a good place in, as soon as you get there, everything in life will get better. And I constantly get people emailing me about this relocation, about how they have to move here or they have to get out of here because a relocation astrologer told them it was so good or so bad or whatever. And it would be great if relocation was that powerful, if we could just move to a particular place on planet Earth where everything would work out. But I think we probably have to go to a whole nother solar system if we want things to just work out that well. Okay? It's just, relocation is not the magical ticket that it's often, sold as. Okay? Now, let's get to the history of relocation first. First of all, in Vedic astrology text, there's no mention of this idea of relocation astrology. There's one text, which is Muhurta Chintamani, which has a small chapter on living in a town or village, where it takes your name and relates your name to the name of the city, and through that lets you see if you're going to give more money to the city or if the city is going to give more money to you. And that's an effective, good technique. And that's all there is in it, in Vedic astrology text. Now, relocation astrology is modern astrology. Okay, now modern astrology is based on classical Western astrology, from the Greeks and the Persians. However, relocation astrology is true modern astrology. I mean, it's astrology that was developed in the last century. Okay, it's something that was developed and became popular in the 1900s. And it's a great technique. But life just doesn't work out that way, that you can just move somewhere else and have everything work out just right. Now, why is that? Well, because relocation technique is not the magic pill of astrology. Relocation is just another astrology technique. Now, what do all astrology techniques do? Whether we use transits, whether we use timing periods, whether we use solar returns known as Varshafala, whatever technique we're using, we're simply seeing what planets are most active right now in your chart. And those are the planets that are going to give you the fruits of your destiny right now. Those are the planets that are going to give you two choices, one which you can take and one which you cannot take. Okay? Or maybe more than two choices. Everything in life is a give and take. And the chart shows all the gives and takes in life, and it also shows which planets we prefer to follow. So those are the ones we give with, versus the planets that we don't care to follow as much, which are the ones that are taken from. And through that we make the choice of our destiny. Now, relocation is just another technique to see what planets are active at this time in your life. And what time are we talking about? The time period that you're in that city. Okay? So if you go to a city for a trip, and you go to New York, and all these Venetian things happen to you while you're in New York because New York lights up your Venus based on relocation astrology, well, we could have predicted that by looking at New York for you and saying, oh, in New York, Venus becomes prominent. There'll be lots of Venus activity in New York. So you go there and you have the best pizza in your life. You meet a supermodel and she actually talks to you at the pizza joint for the whole time that you're eating your pizza. You get your first taxi ride in your whole life I mean, face it, getting a taxi driver is a Venetian affair that most people never have these days, right? So there's all these Venetian things happen to you. Now, the relocation chart would have shown those Venetian things happening, meaning Venus becoming prominent. But even without the relocation chart, we could have looked at your chart and said, oh, you're going into a period where Venus is really prominent during your stay in New York. So I expect a lot of Venetian things. Or you might have said, gee, when you're there, Venus is crossing your ascendant in transit. So transits would have shown it. So it's not that relocation is going to New York is what made Venus happen for you. Venus was happening, meaning there was something in your chart where Venus was getting activated. Along with that activation, there was something in your chart that says you're going on a vacation. And so you go to New York and have a Venetian vacation. Okay? Because that's what's being activated in your chart. And the relocation chart is just another tool to see the same thing. And as astrologers, one of the best ways to do good work is to use lots of tools, meaning to look at an event from several different angles. Because sometimes looking at an event with one technique, it'll be hard to see something. With another technique, it'll be more clear. And with another technique, it'll be even more clear. So if you use a few techniques and you kind of see a few glimmers of the same thing, now you've got the confluence of, okay, everything is showing some Venus somewhere, so we know it's a big Venus thing. Or if we just use one technique, it's easier to make a mistake and say, oh, Venus doesn't look that big. It's a little there, but I think it'll be more Mars. But it's because you didn't read everything completely. So by using more techniques, looking at something from different perspectives, lots of times astrologer can just do a better job reading the chart or making the prediction. So relocation is really a technique to use in that context. Okay? But it's sold as, if you move to New York, supermodels are going to fall all over you because you've got Venus right there happening. Well, maybe that's true. Maybe if you actually moved to New York and lived there the rest of your life, that would happen. But the truth is, if your destiny is not saying you're moving to New York, or you're moving to the place for the next 20 years where Venus is going to be active, then you're just not going to go to New York, no matter how much you want to. You know, I've had a lot of people call and they say, the relocation astrologer said the best place on planet Earth for me to live is so-and-so, is Nantucket, Kentucky. Okay? If such a place even exists. And they try to move there, they try to get a job there, they can't. Or they've got their kids in this state so they can't leave. You know, it's just not their fate to live there and live in the best place on earth because they're not in the right period to have all those nice things, so they don't go to a place. Now, how I try to explain the limitations of trying to move to the perfect place is that where you are is the very foundation of your destiny. So let's say you have the destiny to meet a woman in the hospital that you marry. Okay? And you have the destiny to get in a car accident on the day that you meet the woman that you're going to marry. That means somewhere in some city, there's someone who has the destiny to have a car crash with you. And a woman working at a hospital that is close enough, the closest hospital to where you're going to crash your car, for you to get taken to, that you're going to meet and fall in love with and get married with. Okay? So your fate is going to take you to that place, to that intersection where you're going to crash your car and be the right distance from the hospital, that the ambulance is going to take you to that hospital at the time that super nurse is having her shift, and you meet the girl. And then you talk about astrology, and she loves astrology, and so you talk, and then you get together and talk about astrology, and fall in love, and you live happily ever after. But for that destiny to happen, you have to be in the right city, right? Everything we do mostly has to do with people, right? Most of our destiny has to do with people. One person you had the destiny to get in a car crash with. Another person you had the destiny to meet and marry. Another person is you're destined to have be your neighbor. And if you're lucky, a great neighbor that you can borrow sugar from. And if you're unlucky, a really cranky neighbor who drinks beer, plays loud music, and has a telescope directed at your bathroom window. Okay? It depends what your destiny is. You're going to get that kind of neighbor, etc., etc. You're going to work with Jim Bob because you're meant to work with Jim Bob for the next 10 years in your office. So you come to the city where all those people are there that you have to live your destiny with. Okay? So to think that you can just arbitrarily choose a city and say, oh, New York's the city, you just can't do it, because your destiny is going to pull you to the exact spot you need to be to meet the people and do the things with the people that you need to when you meet them. Okay? And when you think of it in that, and you understand that, you really realize you don't just get to choose where you live, because where you live is the very foundation of destiny. You know, choosing where you live, if you really had free will to do that, that would, first of all, give you the power to have everything the way you wanted it to. And we know that's not true, right? And it would also wreak havoc on everyone else's destiny. So let's say you decided to go to this other city, okay? Now the person that you're supposed to crash cars into, you never crashed his car. Okay? So that guy keeps on drinking. He doesn't get busted that time for being drunk when he smashed into you, let's say. And instead, he mows into a busload of kids. You know, 5 years later when he's totally plastered and murders 20, 40 kids. The nurse who never met you because you never had that accident doesn't marry you. You don't have your kids. One of your kids was the next Einstein. And so the whole world collapses. You see what I'm saying? We have to meet the people we're meant to meet, because that's how the whole creation wants to unfold. And we only can meet them in the place where they're at, or where we're at. That we have to all come together. And the whole world is not going to bend to your will by making all those people come to New York just because you decide to move there. Okay? And that's why you don't get to move to New York unless the chart indicates a move. It indicates a move to a big, glamorous city, and it indicates the city is going to be in the northwest. Then you might have a chance of moving to New York, okay? But regardless of that, even though relocation will not magically change your whole destiny, it's a great technique to see what's happening in your destiny while you're in a particular place. And it's a great predictive tool. Say you're going to go on a vacation. Well, you can look at your chart and say, geez, during my vacation I've got a Mercury transit that's really prominent, and a really strong Jupiter transit. Interesting. I'll meet some really friendly people, Mercury, and I'll gain a lot of wisdom, Jupiter. So, you know that that's active on your vacation. You could do it that way. Or you could just say, geez, I'm going to vacation in the Bahamas. And then you calculate your relocation stuff for the Bahamas, and you go, my gosh, Mercury and Jupiter are really prominent for me in the Bahamas. Therefore, while I'm there, I'm going to have Mercury and Jupiter things. It's just a different technique to see the very same thing. So you don't need it, but it's always good to have another tool in your toolbox, right? Now, what I really like about relocation astrology, it's a lot of fun. It's just a fun thing to do. It's a fun technique. Some other techniques are more drudginess and cumbersome and hard and confusing. Relocation's just fun. It's like, oh, let's see what planets I get active in New York. Let's see what planets I have active in Florida. And then you can try to choose your destiny and say, well, I think I got more nicer planets active in Florida, so I want to go there for my vacation or to live. And you can try to get there, because maybe you are meant to move there. But if you are, you should be able to see in your chart, move to the southeast, to a humid Capricorn type place. Florida is ruled by Capricorn because it's a tropic jungle area, especially if you move to the Everglades. Okay? And what is the symbol of Capricorn in Vedic astrology is a crocodile, right? So Florida is like the perfect place if you've got Capricorn getting active. What if Aquarius is getting active? Or Aquarius rules islands. So then you're going to go off to Hawaii, you know? So if your chart is showing that you're actually going to move to that kind of place, you probably will go there. And maybe you're meant to figure out your next place to live through the help of astrocartography. Or maybe it's because you met some person you're really strongly attracted to on Match.com and they live there, so you say, what the heck, I'll take the job in that city. Or maybe it's because you like the mountains in that city, so you go there. There's always an excuse, a reason that you make the decision to move somewhere on. And that reason is called a Rajasic reason. Because all reasons are Rajasic. And what is Rajasic? It's the idea that you're making a decision based on facts known to you, when you're truly making the decision because that's where God wants you to be. Okay? Rajas means mist. And we've got this mist occluding our vision of what's true behind our reasons and our choices. We go, I'm the one who chose to do this. And that's the mist that keeps us from seeing the truth. The truth is God wants you to live there or doesn't want you to live there, so you end up there. And then, but you always have an excuse, the Rajasic reason, which is the excuse for moving there. Oh, I'm moving there because I love those mountains. I'm moving there because I love the beach. I'm moving there because I love that person. I'm moving there because I've always wanted that job. I'm moving there because I want more money. Those are just the rationale reason that we tell ourselves. But we're moving there for only one reason. Destiny and God want us to be there. So our destiny, which matches the destiny of thousands of other people that we come in contact with, will also be able to unfold. And then we find the biggest, best reason to go there. So, like I said, relocation is a lot of fun. It's a great way to see what's going on in your chart. And also there's a lot of neat ways you can use it. Like lots of times a person will say, look, I'm looking for my guru. And you can look and you can see on the map, well, Jupiter's the strongest for you in the south. So your guru, your teacher, is probably going to come from the south. Boom, that'll happen. Or you can say, gosh, Venus is just so strong in the north. Good chance your spouse is going to come from the north. And boom, she might come from there. So we always go to relocation to see what parts, what directions things come into our lives from. It's not always about us going to the direction. The things in that direction can come to us as well. So relocation is a great branch of astrology, but it shouldn't be oversold as a magical pill to help you change your whole destiny. Your destiny is going to suck until you either do the appropriate meditations that you can change your fate a little bit, but largely it's going to suck until it gets better according to your birth chart and the things getting awoken in your birth chart. And if it's good, it's going to be good only until the planets, different planetary influences rise in your birth chart, and then it's going to suck again. That's the one sure thing in life. Life will go up, and then it'll go down. And life will go up, and life will go down. That's the one thing you can be sure about. Okay? And it does all that in accordance with your birth chart. But we can also, like I said, use the relocation as a tool to see those same things, and sometimes see them more easily. It just depends how good you are at different techniques. So, relocation is a fun one though, because it's a fun way to just see how things are happening in a different area. There's a lot of relocation techniques. The most popular is astrocartography. Astrocartography is where you get a map of the entire globe with all these planetary lines on it. And the idea is, if you live next to one of these planetary lines, you will get that planet in your chart. The nice thing about that technique is that it gives you a big, broad perspective. But it's not really the best technique for narrowing down very minute perspectives. Okay? Because the truth is, your life can be different in this city versus a city 20 miles away. And when your destiny is changing something for the better or worse, you're likely to go to that city 20 miles away. You don't have to go all the way across the world. But it's a great technique for seeing a broad vision. Unfortunately, it's become so popular that a lot of people don't even know of other relocation techniques. Okay? Now, in Muhurta Chintamani, there's a technique based on kakinis, which are coins. Is the city going to give you more coins, or are you going to give the city more coins? And that's an accurate, great technique for seeing if you'll be able to prosper or not in a city. I've already made a video on that, a few videos on that at astrologyvideos.com. Then there's a technique using declinations. That's based on how far north or south of the equator a planet is in your chart. That's called the declination. There's a relocation technique using declination to see which planets become prominent at any given place. Then there's a relocation technique using right ascension. Right ascension is the degree measurements of the planets as they rise over the equator, basically. Okay, it's the equatorial coordinate. Its declinations are north and south. Right ascensions are basically east-west measurements on the globe. We can also use right ascensions to see where planets will awaken. These two techniques are great. I love those two techniques. But I think because they're a bit cumbersome to do by hand, they kind of never became really popular. But they're good, accurate, useful techniques. And they can be very specific. Okay? Then there's something called local space. A local space map. And a local space map is basically we make a map from your birth chart. So if you have Jupiter in the east in your chart, anytime you go east of your birthplace, let's say, you're going to get more Jupiter. And there's lots of innovative ways to use the local space map. This is also something that's not used very commonly. It's kind of fallen away because astrophotography has gotten so popular. But it's a great technique. Then there's simply the relocation chart. And this is a very popular technique. It's a good technique. It's also one that will make you pull your hair out the most, because it's the technique that can get the most confusing. And this is the one I get the most questions on. If I move to here in my relocation chart, I get Jupiter here, what does that mean? And stuff like that. The relocation chart is basically when you calculate a chart for a city as if you were born there. So if you want to move to New York, you basically calculate the chart for the same moment of time, but for New York. And if you had been at the same moment in time, not the clock time, but the same moment in time, been born in New York, that's how your chart would have looked. You would have had different ascendants. Planets would all have been exactly in the same positions, but your ascendants and house cusps would all change. And therefore you'd have a different destiny. So a lot of emphasis is placed on a relocation chart. But the reason this gets so overwhelming to work with and sometimes tricky is because you're looking at a whole new set of charts. With these three techniques, declination, right ascension, and local space, and even astrocartography, they're just so simple because they just let you see which planet in your chart is going to awaken. And so they're a great basic technique. They're every bit as effective as relocation techniques, and in lots of ways more effective because they're just so simple that you're not going to get all confused. And confusion is the astrologer's enemy. So all these techniques are just so simple. The Kikini technique is simple. These are all simple techniques that a 12-year-old could do. And with that, and do well. Relocation chart, you're only going to use that technique as well as you can already do a birth chart, because it's basically using just a different birth chart. So this one takes just a lot more experience to use well. There's a couple simple things one can do with it, but all in all, it's a much more involved study to do the relocation chart. Okay? So I'm going to cover all these relocations. I think I'm remembering all of them. Over the next year or two, into a course, and so you guys can have fun playing with this. I'm going to take my time with it. Whenever I have a little bit of extra time to make a video, I'll just probably do a relocation video until these all get worked out. Because a lot of people ask about it who live in the West. In India, people never ask about this, but in the West, relocation has just gotten so popular in Western astrology that people are constantly asking Vedic astrologers about this relocation stuff too. So it's a good thing to know about, and it's a really fun technique. And again, the Kikini technique, that one is a Vedic astrology technique from Muhurta Chintamani, which is basically from the 1600s, quite old text from India.